Have you ever seen a groom naked on his wedding day? Not in the bedroom, but right there at the altar, in front of the priest, the elders, and the village choir? Look at this man. His name is Mike. Just 1 hour ago, he looked like the president of the world. He wore a suit that cost more than the church building. He drove a car that smelt of dollars. But look at him now, shivering like a wet chicken in the rain. Why? Because he forgot the most important rule of life. You do not bite the hand that feeds you, especially if that hand wears a diamond ring the size of a golf ball. This is the scandalous story of handsome Mike, the village playboy, and Madame Goldie, the woman who owned him, literally. To understand the nakedness, we must look at the background story. Welcome to Tales by Ada. Please be part of our community by subscribing. Your support helps us grow to post more stories. Mike was what they call a fine boy. He had a smile that could melt butter and muscles that looked like they were carved, shiny brown skin and sweet words that could make ladies melt. But Mike had a secret. He had no job. He had no business. He had no office. Mike's only profession was enjoyment as a fine boy. He lived in a penthouse in Victoria Island, but his name was not on the document. He drove a Range Rover, but he did not have the keys at will. He had to take permission before he could drive the car. Everything Mike touched, ate or wore belonged to one person, and that person was the Honorable Madame Goldie. She was a woman of timber and caliber. She owned 3 hotels, a construction company, and a shipping line. And she also owned Mike. She had found him washing cars on the mainland 3 years ago. She liked him and decided that she wanted to have him for a sugar boy. So she cleaned him up. She paid for his gym membership so he would look good and strong on her arms. She bought his expensive and latest clothes. Madame Goldie even gave him a weekly allowance for haircuts and perfumes to smell good. In exchange for all of these, Mike had to answer the phone whenever she called. He was a bird in a golden cage, and the door was locked with a pin code he didn't know. One fateful week, Madame Goldie announced that she was traveling to China to inspect a shipment of her goods. She told Sugar Boy Mike to stay in the mansion and behave well. Madame Goldie kissed Mike on his forehead, like a mother kissing her son, and then left for the airport. As soon as her private car disappeared around the gate, Mike jumped up. The cat was away and the mouse was ready to roar. Sugar Boy Mike had a plan. He was tired of being a boy toy in the hands of Madame Goldie. He wanted Madame Goldie, but he also wanted a much younger lady. Mike wanted to feel like a king, so he raided Madame Goldie's money safe. He grabbed stacks of dollars and naira. He took the spare key to the G-Wagon, the one she forbade him from driving. Mike packed 3 suitcases full of Versace shirts, Gucci shoes, and Rolex watches. He entered the car and drove towards his home village of Umuoda. He wanted to go home and show them that Mikey had finally arrived. When Mike entered Umuoda, the village shook. The G-Wagon was so big it barely fit on the narrow red dirt roads. He stepped out wearing sunglasses that cost more than the village headmaster's salary. He walked with a swagger that screamed CEO. The villagers didn't know he was an unemployed boyfriend with an elderly girlfriend. They hailed him Mike the Don, Mike Money, and Mike soaked it up like a sponge. And then he saw her, Rose. Rose was the village beauty, innocent as a lamb and pure as spring water. She didn't care about money, she cared about character. But Mike was a master of deception. He approached her not as a playboy, but as a business mogul. He told her he was into import and export of general merchandise. He lied that he built orphanages in his spare time and how he was a great philanthropist. Rose fell for the act. How could she not? Mike treated her like a princess. He gave her parents gifts that made their eyes pop out of their heads. He promised to take Rose to the city, to a house where she would never have to lift a finger. He proposed to her under the moonlight with a ring he had bought using Madame Goldie's credit card. Rose said yes, dreaming of a fairy tale. She didn't know she was signing up for a horror movie. For 2 weeks, Sugar Boy Mike lived a dangerous double life. During the day, he was the prince of Umuoda, planning a lavish wedding. At night, he was a terrified servant, answering video calls from Madame Goldie in China. He lied that the network was bad. He lied that he was sick in bed with malaria. He prayed that the wedding would be over before the queen returned. He thought he was smart, but he forgot that Madame Goldie didn't become a multimillionaire by being stupid. In a hotel room in China, Madame Goldie's phone vibrated. Ping! A debit for bridal gown. Ping! A debit for 500 crates of malt. Ping! A debit for live band. Madame Goldie looked at her phone. She looked at the location of the debits, Umuoda village. A slow, cold smile spread across her face. She didn't call Sugar Boy Mike. She didn't scream. She simply booked the next flight home. The lioness was coming to hunt. The Saturday of the wedding arrived. It was the event of the year. The entire village was there. There were mountains of jollof rice. There were rivers of palm wine. Sugar Boy Mike stood at the altar wearing a custom-made white tuxedo, imported Italian shoes, and a gold watch that glittered in the sun. He felt untouchable. He checked his phone. No calls from Goldie. He thought he was safe. Rose, his bride, walked down the aisle looking like an angel. Her parents wept tears of joy, thinking their daughter had secured a soft life forever. The priest began the ceremony. He asked if anyone had any reason why these two should not be joined. The church was silent. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. And then the sound came. Not the sound of angels, but the sound of war. Sirens. Loud, wailing sirens parting through the village air. The ground shook. The guests turned around. A convoy of 3 black SUVs and a police van roared toward the church. The convoy came to a stop right in front of the church doors. Armed police officers jumped out, securing the perimeter. The villagers gasped. Was the governor coming? Was it the president? The back door of the Rolls Royce opened. A high-heeled shoe stepped into the red dust. Madame Goldie. She wore huge dark glasses and a dress that cost more than the entire village harvest. She didn't look angry. She looked like a business owner coming to collect a debt. She walked down the aisle, her heels clicking on the concrete floor. Click, click, click. Sugar Boy Mike turned around. When he saw her, the blood drained from his face. His knees knocked together. He looked for an exit, but the police blocked the doors. Madame Goldie stopped right in front of the altar. She lowered her glasses and looked him up and down. "Baby boy," she said, her voice smooth as silk, "you forgot to invite your mother to the wedding." The priest tried to speak. "Madame, this is a holy union." Madame Goldie cut him off. "Holy," she laughed. "Father, everything you see here is stolen property, and I have come to collect my properties." Madame Goldie opened her file. "Officer," she signaled to the police chief. "The G-Wagon outside. It's registered in my name. The keys, please." The police marched to Mike. Shaking, Mike handed over the keys. The crowd gasped. Rose looked confused. "Mike, whose car is that?" she whispered. Mike couldn't speak. "And the ring," Madame Goldie continued, "purchased on the 14th using my Visa card. Officer, collect the ring." The police officer gently approached the terrified bride. Rose, tears welling in her eyes, slid the ring off her finger and handed it over. The village elders began to murmur. The shame was building. But Madame Goldie was not done. She looked at Mike. She looked at his crisp white suit. She looked at his Italian leather shoes. Mikey, she laughed. "You really thought you could wear my assets to marry another woman? That suit, custom tailored in Milan, paid for by Goldie Construction Ltd. Take it off." The crowd screamed. "Take it off?" Mike fell to his knees begging. "Madame, please, not here. I'm an adult. I I have dignity. Madam Goldie laughed. Dignity? You bought dignity with my money? Officer, help him undress. He seems to be struggling with the buttons. Sugar Boy Mike was stripped. First the jacket, he handed it over with trembling hands, then the shoes, then the shirt. He stood there in his trousers, chest breathing fast, sweat pouring down his face like rain. The village women covered their eyes, peeking through their fingers. The men shook their heads in second-hand embarrassment. The trousers too, Madam Goldie commanded in a harsh tone. And the socks. I remember buying those socks at Harrods. Mike looked at the priest. The priest looked at the sky. There was no help coming. With a whimper that sounded like a dying goat, Mike unzipped his trousers. And there he stood, the fake billionaire of Umoda, the international importer-exporter, standing in the middle of the church in nothing but a pair of polka-dot boxer shorts. He grabbed the bride's bouquet to cover his shame, shivering not from cold but from pure disgrace. Rose took one look at the naked fraud man she almost married, screamed and ran out of the church, her bridesmaids chasing after her. Madam Goldie signaled to her police officers. They collected the suit, the shoes, the ring and the car keys. She didn't look back at Mike. She simply said, "Next time you want to play big man, use your own money." She walked back to her car, the heels clicking a rhythm of victory. Click, click, click. The convoy drove away, leaving a cloud of dust and a naked groom. The villagers didn't help him. They pulled out their phones. Within minutes, Sugar Boy Mike was trending on TikTok. Unable to bear the shame, Mike ran out of the church, into the bush, still clutching the flowers, disappearing into the forest like a wild animal. Rose was heartbroken, but her father told her to wipe her tears. "Better to cry now," he said, "than to marry a thief and cry for a lifetime." They thanked God for the disruption. A broken engagement is better than a fake marriage. As for Mike, he never returned to the city. Madam Goldie blacklisted him. He was last seen carrying bags of cement at a construction site in a neighboring village, wearing old trousers he bought with his own sweat. He finally learned the lesson that every young man must know. My people, do not live a champagne life on a sachet water budget. Independence is dignity. And remember, if you live in a pocket that isn't yours, one day the owner will turn the pocket inside out and you will fall. Do you think Madam Goldie did the right thing to Sugar Boy Mike? Please share your comment with us in the comment section. And don't forget to subscribe to know when we post new stories.